So when I go into organizations and teach the Enneagram, or I teach classes, inevitably somebody wants to talk about their kids. They want to say, what do I do about my kids? Can you type my kids? How old do they need to be where I learn their Enneagram style? And so what I tell parents, and this is something they may not always want to hear, but one of the things I tell parents is that your kids have to have their type, and they have to actually make their way through the world with a type. They need it. And for better relationships with kids, you have to look at yourself. And that means that a lot of times you're projecting your own experience onto your kids. And so, for instance, an 8 is going to project that the child needs to be protected in some way. And a lot of times the 8s can get into their children's lives, can over-control, and they can kind of project their own innocence onto the child and kind of exert too much control. And maybe as the kid gets a little bit older, it's kind of like, back off, leave me alone. The ones sometimes can project their own desire for improvement onto their children. Wouldn't everybody want to, be good, correct, and, let me tell you how you can be fixed. And a lot of times, children of ones will share an experience of feeling like kind of an improvement project, or a lot of times what I notice with one parents is they're so hard on themselves. So hard on themselves. It's sometimes painful. And so a lot of times with ones, I'm just saying, be really gentle on yourself. You're doing the best you can, and allow your kid to mess up. It's just part of growing up. And I'm talking about kind of average range. I'm not talking about some of the really, really big problems where you have to step in some way. I'm just talking about, kind of an average kid, day-to-day things that are showing up in their lives. A lot of times you'll see a 5, and the projection for a 5 is, you may want to be left alone. Or a lot of times 5s I can see is pretty controlling. And a lot of it will have to do with this kind of need to be wise, to give advice, and give the child all sorts of research. The child's looking for a college, and the 5 is studying all of the different schools, giving all sorts of research, and maybe not really attending to the emotional needs of the child, which is, I'm really scared to go away from college. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to really miss my friends, and I don't know if I'm going to meet anybody when I get there. And so for the 5, those emotional needs feel kind of overwhelming. And so sometimes, for the 5, the go-to is to start giving advice and to start quoting research statistics on colleges and on future jobs and how much money you can earn in future years. And I'll see for the 9s, a lot of times they can get really upset when their comfort's disrupted. And so a lot of times the projection onto their children, really has to do with when the child is doing something to disrupt the home in some way. And sometimes, again, this is really normal. And I've also seen 9s kind of go the other way, where they'll go along with things too much. They'll allow too much in the home, when sometimes they have to show up, have a voice, set some boundaries, create some rules, and that requires them to find their own agenda. It requires them to find, kind of what matters to them. For the 6, a lot of times, you'll see the 6s project a world that's unsafe. And so a lot of times you're going to see an overprotectiveness. You're going to see kind of the family being, the 6 families can kind of, walk in clusters, because the 6th parent is kind of projecting their own fear of the world, their own insecurities about other people. Children can be cruel, they can be unkind, the world can be unsafe. And so a lot of times the 6s will project that unsafe world onto their kids, and the kids start not trusting the world, maybe not trusting people. Or you're going to have a kid who's like, leave me alone. Kids are meant to, test boundaries, push the edge a little bit. Then you've got the 7 sitting next door who kind of may allow too much and want them to go out, wanting tests. There's a big wide world out there. It's a big free wide world out there. And the kid's saying, I'm scared. It's not my nature. I don't go out and meet a ton of people. I kind of want to stay home and read a book. Or, I don't want to go overseas and study in some fantastic place. I kind of like my safe college. So if you're a parent, it's really, really helpful to understand your style and what you're going to be projecting onto the kid, and what the messages that the child is giving you. And what I found that's really helpful, that as the parent deepens in awareness, the relationship with the child naturally shifts. So it's not easy. I've raised 3 of them. It's still not easy. So just be kind to yourself.